SDG on number 10 on inequality that we're talking about has this list of goals within it. And if I think I've come into the inequality space looking really strongly at income inequality. So income inequality is about the range, how income is shared in New Zealand specifically, but also comparing New Zealand to other wealthy countries like the countries of the OECD, and as well as wealth inequality in relation to how much people own and the extent of that in New Zealand and how that's changed. And in this SDG, there's a specific goal set around lifting incomes for, basically says over the next, by 2030, countries should seek to increase the proportion of the share of income that the lowest 40% of income earners have of the total income in a country. And that's really interesting that it's setting a benchmark. And if you look at New Zealand for the last 30 years, that share of the lowest 40% of incomes has either been going backwards or static. So we're not on a pathway to meet that SDG right now in New Zealand. And so when you start looking at why, you then start to see how our incomes are like a kind of litmus test of a lot of other things that are going on in our society and the structures. So when you start to ask why are incomes for those on lower incomes not increasing as fast as those on the higher incomes, why is wealth accumulating not at all or negatively for the lowest half of the population, while a tiny group at the top are gaining enormous getting enormous wealth gains. Then you start to think about, well, what are the structures and drivers that cause that? And I guess there's a very long link, prudent to making the link between education, because education is often said, is seen as one of the pathways to achieving greater equality, to reducing gaps. This is a lost opportunity for our nation, because it means young Māori are growing up, they have it's the fastest growing part of our workforce in the future. So for the future of our nation, how well young Māori people are doing will affect all of us. And I guess that's one of the foundational things I think about inequality, is that people might imagine that what's happening to somebody else doesn't affect me. But inequality is actually about how we relate to one another.
Those are the conversations, the real conversations we need to be having with each other around how do we give effect to change. You're right, as Māori, Pasifika and our Asian population become the vast majority in a very short amount of time, they will become the workforce. This is no longer just a Treaty of Waitangi issue. This is actually a socio-economic issue for our country, that if our workforce is not highly skilled and trained properly, then our workforce suffers. So what we do know through the pipeline of education system, that we will be lucky if 20% who complete year 13 will come into degree level programs. So a number of them, a vast majority, will be in the tertiary sector, but they'll be doing level 1s to 4, so diplomas and certificates. Consequently, their marketability in terms of the workforce renders them short on being able to attain those higher income bracket jobs. We essentially, the majority of our workforce will be undereducated in terms of delivering high level skilled jobs. And how do we kind of plug those gaps along the pipeline so that when they do come out, they do consider university as that pathway, or level 7 degree levels, or encourage them up through levels 1 to 4. You know, we're not doing this just for an equity issue or a Treaty of Waitangi issue in the case of Māori, but actually this is about our economy. And if we're going to rely on that generation to essentially support an ageing non-Māori, non-Pacific population, we will need a stronger workforce. And so education is part of that. Part of it is changing the narrative inside that education system. There's so many layers to this. That, there is education, there is changing the narrative, there is just expressing more compassion towards people, and acting more neighbourly, less insular, I think, within our own homes.
I think for communities, for our social and well-being as a nation, we need to be working socially and sustainably, and we're learning more and more now that our social, environmental, economic things are all interwoven. And if I make a link with the SDGs, you can see that whatever we do, those things are linked, and the Sustainable Development Goals really help us to take that seriously, I think. And so there's a whole process where NGOs are getting together and think about, well, how do we make the SDGs real in New Zealand, and connecting to the statistics. New Zealand indicators Aotearoa process where they're actually developing a set of measures to help us report on how we're progressing, because next year we're supposed to start reporting on how the SDGs progress. And I'm looking forward to the day when I can start cheering about how we are really reducing inequality in New Zealand. One of those taglines we've used in our work is Aroha te tahi ki te tati. So I mean, closely looking after your neighbour, let's look after one another. And that's that's a value that we would hope everyone could understand and sign up to. When anything about how we understand our reality coming from the Christian tradition, coming from Te Ao Māori, is that we are inherently interwoven and interwoven with the environment around us, hence the link to the SDGs.
Personally, I am a supporter of whānau ora. I admire the philosophies behind that around what are the actual things that we can do to support whānau in the homes and on the ground, just to deal with some very practical ways of helping to support them and raise them up out of the kind of depths of inequality. So just that principle of thinking about the whānau as a whole unit, and reclaiming back some of those principles of the whānau unit, but being that collective responsibilities for each other, but not just within one home, but across multiple homes, and thinking about our contributions to supporting that. To be fair, there's a lot of goodwill that people want to work more collaboratively.
We've got to that point now, so we're in a nice space. I think in our country we've realised these gaps are too great, the barriers are too high. We're damaging the fabric of our relationships as a country, so let's do something about it.
Yeah, can we solve the world's problems in
it's a big job. Somebody's got to do it.
It is a big job, but I think having these kinds of conversations are important, and I think even just our attitudes towards each other as people, I think has changed over time. And maybe just to kind of wrap up from me would be to think about the proverb around what is the most important thing is people, is people, is people. But thinking about that in that wider collective, and the proverb is not, it is a person, but it is people. And our relationships we have with people, I think, are very key in terms of helping us achieve or breaking down inequalities amongst our society if we're thinking more as a collective as opposed to an individual. So I'm going to leave you with that one.
Yeah, here's to that. Thanks.